In 2020, we are going to have a very important event for the world. Not an internet event, a sports event, the Tokyo Olympics that's going to be in the summer. And let's watch a little bit of a movie that talks about the Olympics, and then I'll show you how it's connected to our world. So let's watch the movie.
We live in a constantly evolving and hyper-connected world. This year, the year of the Olympic Games in Tokyo, provides a unique opportunity to experience that. The Olympic Games connect the world in a celebration of friendship, respect, and excellence. It is the pinnacle of the human spirit. The Games also represent the evolution of humanity through technology over the years. Science and technology make it possible for you to see more timeless Olympic victories. Booking a flight to Tokyo, purchasing tickets online, arranging accommodation, streaming the Games live on your tablet, and keeping track of the results on your mobile phone. All of these online environments must be secured, and that is what we stand for at Checkpoint. We secure it all to ensure better experiences in a safer world. And we do it everywhere, with over 100,000 customers across 88 countries, including all the Olympic Games of the last decade. For the last 25 years, we have set the standard for cybersecurity. Checkpoint. We secure your everything.
Thank you. So I think we can all see that even in something that like the Olympics that celebrate friendship, excellence, physical achievements, still connectivity and cybersecurity is important. Here is another interesting example. 20 years ago in Atlanta, or 24 years ago in Atlanta 1996, we had 171 hours of TV coverage for the Olympics. 20 years later, in Rio 2016, there's already almost 7,000 hours of coverage. That's, of course, thanks to internet streaming media, and that's 40 times more. And again, we are able to share these experiences, we're able to celebrate them thanks to the connectivity and thanks to the internet that we have. I'm not a huge sports guy, but here is my personal Olympic evolution. You can see me here, this is 1984, so it's many, many years ago. I was a 16-year-old kid. I wanted to watch the Olympics. I worked at the university in Jerusalem. You can see the terminal that I worked with, TV 100, if anybody remembers that. And in order to watch the Olympics, I have to shift my work schedule, because in Israel we're 10 hours apart from Los Angeles. So I've actually switched my days, and like a good programmer, started to work nights, started every day at 10 p.m., worked on this terminal, and in parallel watched the Los Angeles Olympics. And as you can see, many, many years have passed, and let's see a little bit about the evolution that we faced, not just in the Olympics, but in our field of networking and connectivity and the internet. So on that time, having a fast internet connection meant that you had 9600 bits per second modem connected. Back then, actually, a 1200 modem I would take too. That was pretty fast. Today, we can get 1 gigabit connection to our house. Back then, I already started working on the TCP/IP network, and I got my first roots of networking experience before, when it was really, really in the early stage of the TCP/IP networks and the multiprocessor systems and stuff like that. Our local area network, or actually our in-chassis system, used to be a 10 megabit system, and that was really, really fast. Today, we're at 100 gigabit of speed in our data center. That's a 10,000 times growth. Let's understand, if we can imagine what's a 10,000 times growth, and let's connect it back to our physical world. If we would grow like that in our physical growth, that means that we could have flown from New York to London, or from Vienna to New York, in less than 3 seconds. We can imagine that. And in the Olympics, we can celebrate the top achievements of humans. We could have run the 100 meters in 0.001, 1/1000th of a second. Let's imagine that. And guys, I think it's very, very important for all of you and all of us here, the Checkpoint customers, the Checkpoint partners, to understand that you're a part of that revolution, doing something that I think was never done in humanity, and that creating huge achievements that change our world. And that's what we do, and that's what we did in the last two decades with the internet. And I think if you look at what we've done in Checkpoint, we came up in 1994 with Firewall 1. It worked very well on a 10 megabits network, which was far faster than what you needed back then when we mainly had T1, 1.5 megabits links. Today, we work with Checkpoint Maestro at 1.5 terabits per second. That's not 10,000 times faster, that's 150,000 times faster. So thank you all for being part of that achievement, of being part of that revolution. And let's go back to what we do every day. And our job every day, when we look at everything in our life, whether it's the Olympics or whether it's running our business, everything today is driven by IT. Connecting the world has gone a very, very long way. When we do social networking, when we watch everything, we stream now to the mobile. Doing e-commerce, ticket reservation, again, if we're talking about events and stuff like that. When we travel, online booking, everything is done today online, and everything needs to be secure. And that's what we are doing for a very, very long time, and that's what you've been doing in any one of your businesses that runs that and needs to secure this new way of running our world. But with that, we also know that cybercrime is becoming a global threat. And if 27 years ago, when I started my journey in Checkpoint, I felt that security is very important. By the way, it was number one concern for the first companies that connected to the internet in 1993. But back then it was fighting amateurs, it was students from one university that was trying, students from, for example, Caltech trying to deface the website of MIT and vice versa. Today it's a global threat. Today is a top concern, and we can see here two quotes from one from Europe, the French defense minister: the cyber war has begun. Another one from Donald Trump, president of the US, calling cyber threats an existential threat. That is pretty big. And that's not just threat at that level to world leaders. That's something that can happen and does happen every day at every business. Here are a few examples from the last few months. You can see from the last 6 months. One pretty big, well-known, Capital One, banking, 100 million accounts breach. Another one, you can see it here, healthcare, a hospital in France, less known. I don't know if anybody heard about that. The hospital moved to what they call to work in a degraded mode because of a ransomware that put the entire hospital systems at risk and doesn't let them operate. And the third one, in a tiny airline in Alaska, malicious attack hit their airplane maintenance systems, and for almost a month now they have delays in flight. They stop flight for a few days because they can't service their airplanes. That's a real thing, and again, that's a tiny airline that I haven't heard about before, but that affects every business of every size, and we need to defend that. We have a very impressive group of researchers in Checkpoint. You can meet them here at the CP Research corner and in many different breakout sessions. And they've identified, they are researching and finding vulnerabilities in our world, but researching what's going on. So they've gave us a list of what we see is the big 5 things that are happening now in 2020. There's many more things happening. All type of attacks are happening, but these are 5 big things that we're seeing in the wild becoming stronger and more important in the 2020. So first we see that the cybercrime is becoming more and more organized, big organization, not just nation state, but true criminal organization that works like a business, like very, very sophisticated businesses that create those attacks. Another phenomena which should worry all of us is the cloud. Cloud security, cloud risks evolve. I mean, you might have even seen some of our research findings on different cloud environments. The cloud risk does evolve. Targeted ransomware. Ransomware is a relatively new phenomena, 4 or 5 years. It's becoming stronger this year, and I think two of my previous examples, I mean one of them, if you look at my previous example, one was about cloud, 2 others were about ransomware. So guys, let's keep our eyes and focus on that, and let's make sure that we use the measures to prevent that. Mobile is one of the things that I think is the #1 risk. I mean, we all carry these devices. Everything we do is going through that device, whether we like it or not, whether we put corporate data on that device or not. It listens to us, it listens to our networks, it knows where we are. Everything we see and do is going through that devices, and yet only a tiny fraction of people use security for mobile devices. Let's see in this room who has mobile security on their mobile phone. It's a nice number, all the checkpoint people. We use that. For the rest of you guys, you need to really, really worry about that, and Peter already mentioned the free licenses that would be given. I do think that it's important that each and every one of us secures our mobile phone. That's extremely important. And by the way, you'd ask yourself why sometimes we don't secure them, why don't we see all the attacks on mobile phones? So guys, first, we do see a lot of attacks on mobile phones from all types. And second, in many cases because the new attacks are what we call multi-vector attacks, we don't see them on the mobile phone. We see them in a different stage of the attack. For example, let's say that somebody puts some malware, spyware on my phone here and steals my credentials. They will use these credentials to penetrate something they can do publicly, like our cloud. They can infect the cloud with some workload that someone else later will download in Checkpoint, and 3, 4, 5 stages later, they got into the internal network, and now they will download the malicious payload. When we will identify the attack, we won't even know it came from the mobile. It should have been stopped at the mobile stage. We would have seen that attack at the 4th, 5th stage of the attack, and we would not recognize it even as a mobile attack, and we need to protect against that mobile attack. So let's be careful about that, and let's use the right stuff to secure our mobiles. And last and not least, what we are seeing coming more and more is new attack vectors like 5G networks, like IoT, which are becoming more and more targets of attacks. We're seeing that, and that's also important to get that into the equation and to secure these environments. And that brings me directly to the model that we developed a couple of years ago, the model of generations of security. You can see here the first generation of cybersecurity started around 30 years ago, moving to the second generation, basic network protection, protecting our networks, and that's where I got involved, inventing the first commercial firewall. Came up with the third generation, fourth generation, attacks that are polymorphic, and when we need behavioral and now even AI technologies to identify them, to where we are right now, the 5th generation of cyber attacks. Multi-vector attacks, very sophisticated, build on all the knowledge and all the methodologies for attack that were defined in the previous generations. And we are now starting to see the 6th generation of attack, where we need to secure our everything. When we have IoT, when we have workloads that are not on traditional computing devices, on cloud environments and other environments, that it's more and more becoming more and more challenging to protect these workloads. And what's the challenge here? You'll ask yourself. The challenge is today we're not protecting against the current attack levels. If we see where we are, 95 to 97% of you guys, different enterprises represented here in the audience or that our partners here serve, are still at the 3rd generation of cyber protection. The attackers are at Gen 5, we are at Gen 3. And we need to change it, but before we change it, we asked ourselves why. Why are we only at the third generation of cyber attacks, and how do we change it? So we asked the different audiences that their job is to secure us. For example, when we ask the chief information security officers, the typical answer that we get, got too many technologies, too many point products, very difficult to go along with it, we need to consolidate. We ask the typical audience that we work with, the security engineers, the people who do the job, the people that are the most important here, security engineers. Overwhelmed, we need to secure the cloud, we need to secure the IoT, how do we face these new environments? Guys at the back that are just getting in, there's plenty of room on both sides, so if you're getting to the most important part of the presentation, please join us. DevOps people that are now becoming more and more important with new workloads, with new cloud environments. They tell us security should be automatic. We can't do things in the human processes that we have. It needs to fit into the automatic processes of working. This is the feedback that we've been collecting. So how do we solve that paradox? What do we use for security? And there's different methodologies, and I'm sure that you are all looking at all the different methodologies. One is obviously get more and more point products to secure our networks. And we have here two axes, the security level and the coverage. You'll see that you get, with each product and even combined, relatively low level of coverage. In some cases, you can find great technologies that will give you a pretty good security level. That's one methodology. Another one is to go to native security, especially in cloud environment. Some vendors, or all the vendors, will offer you some level of native security on the platform. That's not new, by the way. We have native security in every operating system, in every network, forever, but it's not enough. The level of security is too low. And by the way, the level of coverage is also quite low. The level of coverage is usually covering small fraction only of that platform, not the whole picture. We can go and use some stitched products that come from bigger vendors that acquired many technologies and many companies. Here we will get slightly better coverage, but again, these products don't really work together, don't create a uniform environment that secures all the things at the same level, and we will still be behind in the security level. And the challenge that we need to solve, the challenge that's ahead of us, is how do we get an environment with the highest security level, with the full coverage that is secure and that is manageable and we can work with. So let's look at a few of the defining security principles that we're looking at when we're trying to address that. First and foremost, and I think that's the number one thing we stand for in Checkpoint, real-time prevention. 80% of the investment today, 80% of the startups today, 80% of the new technologies today are about detection. How do we detect attacks? How do we remediate that? Guys, that's not enough. Detecting the attack after it happened, remediating that, making huge investment in SOCs and in technology to try and somehow recover the damage that's already done, that's too late. If we make 80% of our investment in prevention, stopping the attack before it would happen, we wouldn't need that much of an investment of fixing things because we will be secure. So the number one principle for me and for us is real-time prevention. How do we prevent the attack from happening? And I think we can achieve, and we've achieved over the years, huge breakthroughs here. So that's number one principle. Second principle is agility. Secure new assets in second. Everything that's being connected, the workload, the network, an IoT device, a user, a mobile user, secure it in seconds. And last and not least, how do we consolidate that? Create one environment, one management, when everything works in concert, when everything works together for the cloud, for IoT, for networks, for workloads, mobile, endpoint, everything. And that's our driving principles when we think today 2020 is a good time to redefine security. And that's what we want to do now, talking about the next revolution in cybersecurity, and we call it Infinity Next. So I'm very proud to start speaking about Infinity Next. We believe that this is a technology that revolutionizes security, a technology that will power our innovation, that will power the next decade. So here are the few principles about Infinity Next. First, we need to secure multi-cloud, adaptive protection for any cloud, for any workload from the get-go. Cloud-native technology that will power our security. Second, incorporate into that the new devices, IoT, mobile devices, endpoints, everything, every connected device needs to be protected in our network. And not last and not least, networks. Continue with securing the networks, any speed. This is at the forefront of technology. We need to be there. So this is the key design criteria for what we need to solve with Infinity Next. And when we put it back into this chart, Infinity Next should fill that gap. Secure, manageable, delivering the highest level of security and the high level of coverage. So this is Infinity Next. And let me show you, start with what problem we solve, and the second part will be what's the revolutionizer, what's the magic, what's the technology inside that, how do we move from our world today to the world of consolidation. So let's first start with the business challenge. Let's meet here Roman. He's a IT CISO, Chief Information Security Officer for a hospital. He has about 740 beds, 2 campuses, 1 data center, 5,000 employees. Very typical to any environment. It could have been, instead of a hospital, it could have been an enterprise of any size. But even at that size, which is not huge, but it's not small, Roman has many different platforms. Medical devices, which are IoT, but you also have endpoints, mobile application, containers, new medical applications that are running on the cloud and are using AI technology. Again, 2 campuses, the regular platforms that we have for many years from now, and he needs to secure all these platforms, or sometimes we call them asset types, so I'll interchange between these 2 vocabularies. He looks at that and he says, if I need to really secure them, I need 19 vendors. That's a nightmare. And you see a lot of nice name of good companies that provide technology for that environment. We can have other names here. We can interchange them back and forth between the different vendors. But at the end of the day, 19 vendors is a nightmare. And if we look at the complexity that he needs to solve, there's going to be here many different types of assets, many technologies applies to different platforms. Can you solve that nightmare? And we have today, and we can share with you, 50 by 60 combinations of platforms and technologies. How do we really solve that maze? And that's where we need to offer complete security to all of it. So let's see what does that complete security means. So let's start by the different platforms or the different assets. This is Checkpoint today. Today we know how to secure all these assets, networks of any type, the new one, the traditional one, the new one, the SD-WAN networks, so on. We know how to secure them. Endpoints, Macintosh, Windows, all the versions, we know how to secure them. Mobile devices, iOS, Android, again. Cloud platforms, Cloud Office 365 or SaaS applications, the private clouds, the public clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP, we know how to secure them. But that's just 2019. When we look at 2020, we got new types of platforms. The workloads that we have, whether it will be containers or serverless functions or web services that are all on the cloud, on the new clouds. IoT devices, like I gave in the previous example, medical devices, light bulbs. You'll see our research today about light bulbs and how they create a security vulnerability to every environment, security cameras, and basically every device that we have around us, we need to secure them all. And what you can see here is about 20 new types of platform that we aim to secure at 2020. So that's 50 types of assets that we want to secure with Infinity Next, and about 20 of them are new. That's unimaginable when we look at the pace of technology. Now, what technologies we need to secure them? So we divided the technology into 5 departments here, like a brain, like the different parts of our brain: preventing known attacks, preventing unknown attacks, more sophisticated technologies, a lot of AI is used here, a lot of unique technologies for checkpoint like malware DNA to detect, to find and prevent unknown attack. Zero trust access technologies, and then a bunch of new technologies, some of them, most of them are for the new platforms. Hardening and compliance, code and API security. We need all of that, and you can see in this chart there's 60 security services. By the way, each one of them is then divided to additional what we call nano security services, which is divided into the different functionalities, and we get thousands of security modules and security functionalities that come in every checkpoint product. And 20 of these security services are new just now, just for the latest versions of what we provide. And these are the technologies mainly you can see in several areas, but mainly for the new type of assets and for the future generation of security. So this is the brain, and this is the security services that you need in that platform. And the solution that you need to have needs to include both the security services and all the different type of assets. Now let's see how it applies to the world of Roman. So Roman here can now have one platform, the Infinity Next, securing all the different type of assets that he has in his environment with all the security levels, and with one console here, the Infinity Next portal management that will provide him with the ability to connect all the right dots and provision and provide the highest level of security to every service. And by the way, let's connect to the future and let's connect to the past. You can even write the smart console for checkpoint from the cloud, management as a service using a web browser, and get the same still very sophisticated security policy management to your networks within the same framework. So if you watched that magic, that suddenly Roman moves from nightmare to an environment when everything can be secured and everything can work together, you should ask yourself, or you should ask me, how does it work? How does this magic works? Again, it's easy to say that on stage, but we really need something different in the way we run the technology so we can make it work. So the answer to that is what we call Gen 6 nano security. And that's the magic, and that's the big evolution in the Gen 6 or in the Infinity Next architecture. So how do we do it? If you look today on the gateway that we provide, you'll have 5 gigabytes of software, not of memory, much more memory, just the software itself. All these different security services, they're all embedded into that device, very, very sophisticated, highest level of security in the industry. I'm pretty sure no other vendor can match that level, that depth and breadth of security inside the existing gateways, the existing network infrastructure. But it also comes with some limitation. We can't put 5 gigabytes of software in every serverless function. We can't put it on every container. We can't put it on every virtual server in the cloud. We need to upgrade it. We need to update it. That requires a lot of resources. We need to keep it up to date. We need to provision that. That's your job, you know, but it's a big job. It's a big task. So how do we move it to all these assets and all these workloads? And that's the Nano Agent. The Nano Agent here will have no upgrades, will be available everywhere, always the latest security, and the Nano Agent will plug to any asset type, really what we call secure your everything, everywhere, and it's going to be very lightweight. most cases less than 50 megabytes. And that nano agent will be connected to our Infinity Next cloud, where the magic comes. And that cloud will provision and provide all these services to every asset type. Like you can see in this chart, mobile, network, cloud. And if we look at cloud specifically, for example, you can see here a Kubernetes container, an NGINX web service, a serverless function, a Lambda serverless function. Each one of them will have a tiny nano agent. The tiny nano agent will connect to our cloud and will get the exact services that it needs, including code analysis, including runtime prevention, including API protection. All of them will be available from that Infinity Next cloud as a service. Now, I know that sounds good, but you are a security professional, and again, I'll ask your questions for you. What about availability, latency, privacy? We don't want to send all our data to some public cloud or to the external work. So we have a good answer for that, for the availability, latency, and privacy. Your data should not leave your premises. We have built an enterprise model, we call it a fog. The fog will run on your network. On your network, again, it can be a physical one, and it can be a tenant in the cloud, and your data shouldn't leave your cloud unless it requires real notification of the cloud service. And you get the latency, the speed, the privacy that you need still within a global cloud service that works seamlessly and provide all these cloud services. And this is going to be extended over time to every service, to the networks, to the operating systems, to the IoT devices. They are all going to enjoy this cloud Infinity Next model that's going to deliver security everywhere. Now, what does it mean? Let's go back to our friend Roman and his other friend Dan. So what does Dan need to secure his environment? Dan needs 19 security vendors. To run them, he will need 24 security engineers. The security level he will get will be slightly better than Gen 3, maybe a little bit better. The annual cost to run this operation will be almost $6 million. It's huge. And by the way, most businesses don't afford that $6 million, and therefore they don't get the security that they need. Roman, on the other hand, switching to Infinity Next, I think that we can do it with one vendor, but I'm not sure that any one of you will replace everything you have with just Checkpoint. We did in Checkpoint. You will need 4 security vendors, maybe less. As I said, I think we can do it with one. To do that, you don't need more than 6 security engineers. By the way, that's something you can find. You cannot find 24 security engineers. Here you can get people at the highest level that don't just maintain and install, but you can get people that can actually understand security, investigate security, define the right policies. The security level will be a Gen 6. Every workload, every IoT, every technology will be utilized here, and the overall budget will be a little bit more than $2.5 million. That's the new generation of security, and that's what we are going to deliver with Infinity Next. So that's the big thing that we're launching here. I'm very, very proud to be here, and maybe I'll summarize now what we are delivering. So Infinity Next is going to be a revolutionary technology, the future of cybersecurity, one cloud in the middle that delivers the highest level, the brain of security, to the data center, to the branch, to the cloud, to the IoT, to the mobile, to the endpoint. Best security prevention, and remember, secure prevention is the #1 principle. Best service SLA, easy to deploy, easy to use, and really secure your everything. This is what we need to do, each and every one of us. We need to step our environment, our customers, our partners to the latest generation. We need to go all the way to Gen 6, so in the future, and when we meet here, not just next year, but 10 years from now, let's imagine our world in 2030, when our world is run by AI technology, when we have nano sensors for data that collect any information about us, from how we move to where we go. This is where we are heading. Industries that become run by robots, which again, big part of it is already happening, and that all our data is on the cloud, is shared, and we need to keep it personal and private. That's what we need to secure, and that's what we are going to do with Infinity Next. Really move to the cybersecurity for 2020, or it should say here for 2030, and empower the next generation of cyber. That's what's your job, that's what's my job, that's our joint job. I'm really, really happy that you are part of my journey. Started again 27 years ago and hopefully will last for much more. Really thank you for joining me today, and let's build the future of cybersecurity. Thank you very much.
Gil, please stay with us. We'll answer a couple of questions if that's all
So I
right.
can't go?
No, just stay for a second.